on November 9th, 2024, just 32 days after your last public comment saying that women absolutely should not be in combat, you declared that, quote, some of our greatest warriors are women, and you support having them serve in combat. Now, that is a very, very big about face in a very, very short period of time. So help me understand, Mr. Hegseth, what extraordinary event happened in that 32-day period that made you change the core values you had expressed for the preceding 12 years?
Senator, again, I very much appreciate you bringing up my comments from 2013, because for me, this issue has always been about standards. And unfortunately, because of some of the people that have been in political power for the last 4 years, priorities other than standards, lethality, and meritocracy have driven decision-making.
I'm quoting you from the podcast. Women shouldn't be in combat at all. Where is the reference to standards? That they should be there if they can carry, if they can run? I don't see that at all, Mr. Hegseth. What I see is that there's a 32-day period in which you suddenly have another description about your views of women in the military. And I just want to know, what changed in the 32 days that the song you sang is not the song you come in here today to sing?
Senator, the concerns I have and the concerns that many have had, especially in ground combat units, is that in pursuit of certain percentages or quotas, standards have been changed. And that makes the combat more difficult for everybody involved. Let me make a suggestion about what happened in that 32 days. You got a nomination from President Trump. Now, I've heard of deathbed conversions, but this is the first time I've heard of a nomination conversion.
32 days. Engrave that number in your mind. Not 3 years, nor a decade of refining to awaken to a new ideology. A mere 32 days. Look at Mr. Hegseth's flustered demeanor as he is pinned down by this exact timeline. Nomination conversion. With a single phrase, Elizabeth Warren unmasked the opportunistic nature of the Pentagon's top nominee. What we are watching is one of the most ruthless unmaskings to ever take place on the floor of the U.S. Senate. The focal point is not a partisan squabble between conservatives and progressives. The core issue here is the measure of integrity of the man about to wield life, and for death authority over the greatest armed force on the planet. Wasting no time on roundabout pleasantries, Senator Elizabeth Warren pierced straight into the eye of the moral crisis named Pete Hegseth, facing off on two battle lines, a battle-hardened senator armed to the teeth with ironclad records, and a Secretary of Defense nominee desperately trying to wash away 12 years of ideological preaching in less than 30 days. What motive drives a man who spent his life denigrating women as weakening military strength to suddenly pivot and glorify them as greatest warriors the instant he gets the nod from Donald Trump? Let's dissect Warren's art of casting the net and how Hegseth dug his own grave in the deep pit of hypocrisy.
So going back to January 2013, you told a Fox News interviewer that women in the military simply couldn't measure up to men in the military, saying that allowing women to serve in combat roles would force the military to lower the bar. You picked up on that same theme in 2015, making remarks on Fox News, referring to women in combat as, quote, it would erode standards. June 2024, you said on Ben Shapiro's podcast, quote, women shouldn't be in combat at all. And then, of course, we've talked about it in 2024. You published a book, and you say on page 26 of your book, we need moms, but not in the military, especially in combat units. Page 48 of your book, you claim that women should not be in combat roles because men are distracted by women. And then 10 weeks ago, you appeared on the Sean Ryan show and said, I'm straight up just saying we should not have women in combat roles. Now, I presume you recall making all these statements?
On the Senate floor, what is printed in black and white is the coldest, most ruthless sword. Here, Warren unleashed the tactic of shrinking the political space. Instead of relying on anonymous sources or news, reports easily branded as fake news by the opposition. She smacked the nominee right in the face with specific page numbers from his own book, alongside public audio files. Hegseth's privilege to deflect was completely stripped away. Page 26 and page 48. In a court of law, a podcast clip can be rationalized away as taken out of context, but a published book, you have to write the manuscript, pass it through an editorial board, review the drafts, correct the typos, and then sign the print order. That is the testament of a deliberately honed ideology. Hegseth cannot mount the defense that the senator is misinterpreting my words, because his reason for banning women from bearing arms has absolutely nothing to do with physical fitness tests, but because men supposedly cannot control their distraction. The chronological net suddenly tightens. Warren built an inescapable fortress locking Hegseth inside, a long span of 12 years, squeezed dry into exactly 10 weeks. The closing strike, do you recall making all these statements, is not actually a question seeking an answer. It is a verdict sealing off every escape route. Hegseth is officially backed into a windowless room. Whenever a commentator or politician ties their own noose with absolute extremist rhetoric in the past, they are silently planting a time bomb right beneath the seat of power they crave.
Senator, again, I very much appreciate you bringing up my comments from 2013, because for me, this issue has always been about standards. And unfortunately, because of some of the people that have been in political power for the last 4 years, priorities other than standards, lethality, and meritocracy have driven decision-making.
I'm quoting you from the podcast. Women shouldn't be in combat at all. Where is the reference to standards? That they should be there if they can carry, if they can run? I don't see that at all, Mr. Hegseth. What I see is that there's a 32-day period in which you suddenly have another description about your views of women in the military. And I just want to know, what changed in the 32 days that the song you sang is not the song you come in here today to sing?
The defense sounds somewhat plausible at first, doesn't it? I don't hold a grudge against women. I just want to protect military standards. If Senator Warren had shown mercy and stopped here, Hegseth might have slipped through the cracks. However, a seasoned apex predator of the Senate will never surrender the mastery of the verbal chess game. Watch how she crushes his lifeline, disguised as standards. Razor sharp. I don't see that at all. Warren exposed the true face of Hegseth's sophistry. Previously, he used the phrase, straight up. This equates to an absolute ban based on biological gender boundaries, and has absolutely zero to do with physical metrics or combat standards. Hegseth tried to drape himself in the cloak of a diligent military expert, but Warren did not hesitate to shred it. Exposing the naked reality, this man only rushed to sing a different song because the person paying for the theater has changed.
I'm incredibly grateful for the two women who've served our military in uniform, and including in the Central Intelligence Agency, contributions on the battlefield, indispensable contributions. Senator, I would like to clarify, when I'm talking about that issue, it's not about the capabilities of men and women, it's about standards. And this committee has talked a lot about standards. Standards that we, unfortunately, over time, have seen eroded in certain duty positions, certain schools, certain places, which affects readiness, which is what I care about the most, readiness on the battlefield. I appreciate that. And so my comments point time and time again to standards. I'd say I would be honored to have the opportunity to serve alongside you, shoulder to shoulder, men and women, black, white, all backgrounds, with a shared purpose. Our differences are not what define us. Our unity and our shared purpose is what define us, and you will be treated fairly and with dignity, honor, and respect, just like every man and woman in uniform, just like the men and women that I've worked with in my veterans organizations, to include when I was a headquarters and headquarters company commander in the Minnesota National Guard.
Well, I appreciate your 11th hour conversion.
And I would point out, I have never disparaged women serving in the military. I respect every single female service member that has put on the uniform, past and present. My critiques, Senator, recently and in the past, and from personal experience, have been instances where I've seen standards lowered, and you mentioned 11 Alpha, 11 Bravo, MOS, places in units, and the book that has been referenced multiple times here, The War on Warriors. I spent months talking to active duty service members, men and women, low ranks, high ranks, combat arms and not combat arms. And what each and every one of them told me, and which personal instances have shown me, is that in ways direct, indirect, overt, and subtle, standards have been changed inside infantry training units, ranger school, infantry battalions, to ensure that
Give me one example. Please give me an example. I get you're making these generalized statements.
Quotas to have a certain number of female infantry officers or infantry enlisted, and that disparages those women
Commanders
who are
do
incredibly
not have to
capable
meet
of meeting
quotas
that
for the
standard.
infantry. Commanders.
Written that after they retire, generals should be banned from working for the defense industry for 10 years. You and I agree on the corrosive effects of the revolving door between the Pentagon and defense contractors. It's something I would have liked to talk with you about if you'd come and been willing to visit with me. But the question I have for you on this is, will you put your money where your mouth is and agree that when you leave this job, you will not work for the defense industry for 10 years?
Senator, it's not even a question I've thought about, because
You can
it's
think
not
about it
one
right
that-
now.
It's not one. My motivation for this job
I understand
has never
that. I
been
just
about
need
what
a
could
yes or no
conceivably
here.
come next.
Time is short. I just need a yes or no.
I would consult with the president about what the policy should be
In
at the Defense
other
Department.
words, you're quite sure that every general who serves should not go directly into the defense industry for 10 years. But you're not willing to make that same pledge?
I'm not a general, Senator.
You'll be the one, let us just be clear, in charge of the generals. So you're saying sauce for the goose, but certainly not sauce for the gander?
I would want to see what the policy of the president
Oh, I'll
is.
bet you would.
Viewed through the lens of upper echelon governance, this is precisely the moment the nominee self-sabotaged his entire leadership legitimacy. Warren delicately laid out a litmus test called leadership by example. For a long time, Hegseth had polished his brand as an iron fist, wanting to clean up the Pentagon, fiercely demanding that retired generals sever ties with the revolving door of weapons oligarchs. Yet, the moment he was cornered into swearing a blood oath to that very principle for himself, he slithered away, brushing it off with an empty, hollow phrase, "I'm not a general," in the eyes of the Senate. A man about to sit in the highest command chair who deludes himself into thinking he is immune to the strict moral standards he forces upon his subordinates is an unforgivable structural disaster. This very double standard is the poison that corrodes the disciplinary roots of any army. The Senate floor is always a magnifying glass, reflecting the truth. The spectacle we just witnessed doesn't just stop at a few foolish slip-ups in the press. It reflects the rot within the moral compass of a man knocking on the door of a cabinet. Siege. Senator Warren's razor-sharp verbal slashes confirmed an immutable theorem of the political arena. Once a leader's core values are downgraded into bargaining chips to exchange for power, the national security lifeline becomes nothing more than a game of roulette. If Pete Hegseth can toss his 12-year ideology into the trash can in a mere 32 days, what standing does the Pentagon have to believe that he won't continue to bend national security standards to kneel before the next political wind? Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons to join us as we continue to dissect the strategic dark corners in Washington. What is your perspective on the fate of this nomination after that stormy interrogation? Drop your thoughts right down in the comments section below. Thank you for joining us for this broadcast.